Hello, everybody, and welcome to Europe Trip Day 4. I hope you noticed that all of those guys had different heads, but we'll get back to them a little bit later. We start in Neuschwanstein and make our way north through Bavaria on the romantic road. Quick stop in Nordlingen, and then on to Rothenburg, Obertober. We started our drive here at an Audi maintenance facility. We had a lot of trouble with the gear shifting. Now, it doesn't cause any major problems. It just, when we shifted from second to third gear, it made a nice metal cling clang noise, which obviously wasn't right because it didn't do it with any of the other gears. And so we just had them look at it. Obviously, when the car is nice and warm, it didn't do it as loudly as when it was cold. And with the language barrier and everything, and it's obviously was the car that was built for the U.S., so everything in on the computer is in English and all of that great stuff. And so we had a little bit of trouble with that, but they're just like, yeah, it's fine. And we're like, great. We'll just go on our way. And we'll just have them fix it when the car comes back to Denver. So, no big deal. So, anyways, this is the romantic road. Basically, what it does is it links Neuschwanstein with Rothenburg Obertober. Basically, a way for all of the towns in between to get visited as a way for tourism, basically. And it was very pretty. It's reminded me a lot of Ohio, actually. Kind of, it's fairly flat and it's just farmlands forever. But really nice day here, and we had a really nice drive. I think next thing I want to talk about was our hotel in Neuschwanstein. Jessica found this place, and it was very amazing. It was basically the closest hotel you could get to the castle, and we had to have special papers and everything to get up to get up to the hotel, because it's so close, and obviously the road up to the castle is just tons and tons of people walking up and down that hill. The hotel itself is basically a restaurant, and that was very evident that it was their top priority was the restaurant side of it. As soon as we tried to check in, they're just running everywhere back and forth trying to help people out the restaurant. Then when they had a break, one of the waiters basically checked us in, gave his key, and quickly told us, about everything, and then went on his merry way to go help customers again. It was kind of funny. I think obviously they make a lot of money with the restaurant because it's so close to the castle, and the walk up from the town where all of the parking lots and everything are up to the castle is no short hike, and it's a significant gain in elevation. And there's a lot of people that should not have been walking up that road that were. They also had a bus service, but of course you had to pay for the bus service, and so people obviously want to save money any way they can, and so they just walked up. And a lot of times they would stop at the restaurant in order to take a break and rest their legs and probably rest their lungs as well, to make it up there. The hotel itself, it was pretty nice. It was nothing special. Obviously, it was all about the location. It had a shared bathroom, so there's basically a men's and a women's bathroom, and then a men's and a women's shower. Well, not really. It was just there was just two separate showers, and even the bathroom, it was you went in, and then there was a big sink, and there was a door for the men's toilet and a door for the women's toilet, so you shared the same sink. And then that was just on each floor, and it wasn't a ton of rooms, probably maybe 10 rooms on each floor or something like that, and there was only couple different floors. So a fairly small hotel. They did have a really good breakfast in the morning, which was nice because it's a restaurant. Um, and yeah, it wasn't that bad. I want to talk real quickly here before we get to our first town of Nordlingen about city walls. Nordlingen and Rothenburg Obertober both have walls that completely encircle the town. And when you drive around Europe, that's really rare. Um, and so what happened basically was back in medieval times, basically before the 1600s, um, cities were their own independent, like municipalities, I guess you could say. And so the city would be kind of the center of an area of land that the city itself governed. And it would either be, they would rule itself, or there would be a king that would rule over the area. Either ways, the cities kind of just independently had their own thing, and there would maybe even be other towns within the governing area of a major city. And both Nordlingen and Rothenburg Obertober were similar to these major, very large cities for their time. And so what would happen was they'd be big targets for enemies or people maybe from neighboring cities trying to gain more land and more area. Um, and so they would be attacked all the time. So they just built a wall around their city in order to keep all of the bad guys out, basically, and keep all the people of their town in and safe every night. And so every night they would close the gates and everything, and everyone would just kind of tuck away for the night. And in the morning, gates would open back up. So what happened was, um, eventually, all the places in Europe gained country status. And with a country, you have the country governing all of the cities, and the country also protecting all of the cities of that country with their own military. So there was no longer really a need for each city to have its own defenses because the country is going to defend you. Um, so basically, these towns would grow bigger and bigger, and uh, they wouldn't need that wall anymore, and so they would just destroy the wall in order to use the resources from that wall to build other buildings around them. And with Nordlingen and Rothenburg Obertober, the cities never grew, and so they maintained the same exact population until the 1800s when tourism started becoming a thing, and they realized they could earn all this money from tourism by staying in that old medieval style fashion. And so then they passed all these laws to prevent the city from changing how the architecture is and how things are, as you can see here in the picture.
There's the ringing of the bells.
Alright, I went a little bit long explaining that there. We've already gone through Nordlingen now, so I'm going to talk about a little bit. The church there in Nordlingen, if you remember the very first picture in this video with all the different heads, that is the church that that had the heads in it. Nordlingen was officially established in 898 AD, but they've actually found remains of a Roman castle that was built in 85 AD, which means there was already people well established there when they built the Roman church. The whole town, or at least the old town, is built inside of a meteor crater, which is kind of weird. And the church and many of the buildings use the stone from that crater, which kind of creates a different kind of color of stone from any of the other cities around the area. The stone actually contains millions of teeny tiny little diamonds that are less than zero point 0.2 millimeters across. And if you think of that, if you take an inch and divide it up into 125 pieces, each of those diamonds is less than one of those slices across. So very, very tiny. Um, the the tower of St. George's Church is called the Daniel. It's 295 feet tall, and you're able to climb all the way to the top of it, which is where we got those pictures of the city from. You might notice it looks a little bit familiar because the end scene and the credits from the 1971 film Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is Nordlingen. So you can look that up again if you're ever watching that movie. We had some amazing hot dogs there, um, and they also had a little street market here. That is my fastest speed of the Euro trip, 130 miles an hour or 209 kilometers per hour. I still had a lot of RPMs left. I probably could have made it to 150, maybe 150, but the actual published top speed of the car is 130. And it was still just smooth as silk. It was absolutely amazing. All right, I'm just going to move right along to Rothenburg Obertober. Even though we haven't gotten there yet, I have a little bit to talk about before we get there. Rothenburg Obertober literally translates to Red Fortress above the Tauber, and the Tauber is the river right next to the town. There's basically no record of when the town was initially established. It's just basically been there forever. In the medieval ages, it was a huge town. I believe maybe the fifth largest in Germany. As huge, very rich, very big town. The town was only overtaken once in 1631 during the 30 Years' War. The troops left the town poor and nearly empty, and then 3 years later in 1634 the bubonic plague killed many more people, and so without any money or power, the city stopped growing and froze in its 17th century state. So now in 1877, this is over 200 years now have passed where the city just froze and didn't change at all. It looked just like this that you're seeing right now. Um, in 1877, a famous German landscape painter visited and was very impressed. He was only there for 2 days, but he painted some of the city and talked about this amazing city to his artist friends who came and, of course, painted more paintings. And then other people saw those paintings and wanted to come visit, and tourism began. And so, as soon as tourism began, the city said, hey, we can make a lot of money off this. And so, they made laws to keep the city looking exactly like it was. Um, there was, in World War II, the city was bombed, and it destroyed about 40% of the city, including about 200 meters of its wall. So as soon as the war ended, the city tried to decide, how do we do this? How do we get the money in order to rebuild our city? And so they asked people all over the world if they could donate money to rebuild the wall. And people did. And so you can get a stone engraved with your name and how many meters of the wall you have donated to rebuild the wall. You can still do it today. One of the coolest things we did in Rothenburg Obertober was the tour of the Night Watchman. It was this guy that appeared in period clothing and told us about what the city was like, how it became, how it was, and basically kind of a history lesson, if you could say. And one of the cool stories he told was this street that was this really dark, kind of scary area of town that was nicknamed Hell. And so they there was this bar just right there in that area that ended up just naming itself to Hell. And the German the German name is Zur Hölle, which literally means to hell. And so one of the funny things is saying in Rothenburg, if somebody tells you to go to hell, you could just say, well, yeah, I think I am a bit thirsty. I think I will. Thank you. So we thought that was pretty cool. Um, One of the other things about Rothenburg is the Schneeball, which is a deep fried dough, kind of in a snowball or a small baseball shape, that's covered in sugar or chocolate. We each had one of those. They were very good. And the last thing here before we get closer to the end is uh, the town was the inspiration for the 1940 movie Pinocchio, and they also filmed scenes of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2. And here's that little video I was going to talk about.
Kind of weapon. It's called a hell bar. One can do a lot of things with it.
And that's it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.